This episode is brought to you by Commerce, parent company of BigCommerce, Feedonomics, and MakeSwift.
I think as brands are thinking about this, they should really think of the idea that prediction is one of the new thoughts of targeting. AI is shifting us from this reactive to this proactive stance, and the best commerce media strategies that are out there are anticipating the needs before the consumer is expressing them.
Welcome to Retail Remix. Retail media, or commerce media, whatever you like to call it, has been one of the most interesting new business models to emerge in the industry in years, and more companies are joining the bandwagon. My guest today, Jeff Cohen, served until very recently as the principal evangelist of Amazon Ads, the original retail media network. Now that he's moved on to an exciting new gig, we're going to get his unfiltered take on the evolution of commerce media, both at Amazon and across the broader sector, and find out where he thinks things are headed from here. This conversation is about much more than the still relatively niche world of commerce media. It's about the future of digital advertising and online discovery. Welcome back to Retail Remix. I'm your host, Nicole Silberstein, editor-in-chief at Retail Touchpoints. And today I have with me the former principal evangelist for Amazon Ads, Jeff Cohen, who has recently taken on a new role at the commerce media platform Sky. Jeff, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So first off, principal evangelist is not a title that I've come across maybe ever before. So just tell me what it meant to be the principal evangelist of Amazon Ads.
Yeah, it was not a title that I ever thought I'd have in my life, but somebody was recruiting me to come work for them. And I made a joke that the only job I would ever leave my company for was if Amazon paid me to fly around the world and talk about Amazon advertising. And I found that Amazon had a role that at that point was called the API evangelist. And I applied for and was hired into that role. And it evolved over my 4 years at Amazon to be the Amazon Ads tech evangelist. And so in my role, my job was to really decipher what Amazon Ads was building and how our ecosystem of partners, the 3,500 partners we had globally, could build into our technology. A lot of people shared with me as my feedback that big part of my job was to help them understand what Amazon was building, what it meant for them, what it meant for their business, and how they should prioritize it. And so I met with companies like Sky and many of our competitors to help them build out their roadmap, understand Amazon Ads technology, understand how advertisers could be using it, and understand ultimately where Amazon was making investments and therefore where they should be potentially making investments.
So are you telling me that there's more than one evangelist at Amazon, that this is like a common title over there?
So in Amazon Ads, no. Unfortunately, I was the last one, and they haven't filled my position. But actually within the AWS community, it was actually a very common title. I do think they've changed the title over time. I was told by somebody that Paul Kotis didn't like the term evangelist, but I hope he liked me as a person, even if he didn't like my title.
I'm sure he did. Well, so just tell us a little bit about how you ended up getting into retail media in the first place, to the point that you then got recruited by Amazon and now are over at Sky.
Yeah, so I stumbled into this space 20 plus years ago when I was designing corporate websites, and the CEO of our company asked for me to build a D2C website. And that website was called textbooks.com. And that kind of led me into understanding e-commerce in 2005. And that led me to a second career where I started buying products at USPS auction with a partner that I had met, and uncovered kind of this world of third-party resellers on Amazon in like 2012, 2013. We were building technology for ourselves as a company to help us scale and grow. And what we realized was that we had better technology than what a lot of other third-party sellers had in the space at that point in time. And so we replatformed our company to be an external software versus an internal software. And we were one of Amazon's first third-party software providers in the space back when we were building off of the old MWS API and Amazon Ads didn't even exist. In 2015, when Amazon was really looking to kind of productize Amazon ads as a external tool and build it through their partner network, we were one of the first to be part of the beta program, and we launched our product in 2016. What I realized when we launched the product was that nobody actually knew what Amazon ads were or how to use them. And so I had to actually spend a lot of my time actually teaching people what's the difference between a keyword and a search term? How do you use a negative term to improve your overall advertising cost of sale? And we, myself and others in the industry, were really kind of making up terms like ACost and tacos because we as an industry didn't even know how to review and evaluate our advertising and what it was doing and how it was working. And so as Amazon kind of evolved and brought out more products like sponsored products and sponsored display, I was learning more and more about these products. I had my own brand. I was selling online. I was advertising myself. I was running an agency where we were running ads for other people. And I just kind of naturally fell into a place where I was doing a lot of teaching and developing thought leadership that was then leading to people understanding how to advertise on Amazon in a better way, which then led to me ultimately doing that for Amazon.
And now at Sky, what are you doing there?
So my role at Sky is I'm the Chief Business Development Officer. I work with all of our partners, which are our retail media networks, call it the Amazon, the Walmarts, the Instacarts of the world, as well as our commerce partners. So our partners who make up the wider suite of product offerings that we have, whether that be digital shelf providers or whether that be content providers or whether that be refund management, all the other things that you need to do to make your brand successful as you're selling in an omni-channel world.
So you have really kind of been a part of this space since the very beginning, because the original retail media network was Amazon ads and what it started building there. Lately, I think you're the perfect person to ask this question. Do we still use the term retail media, or should we be using commerce media? Are they two distinct things? Are they an evolution of the terminology? What should we be calling this thing?
Yeah, so I think retail media was really the spark that kind of got us going, and commerce media is the idea or the expansion of kind of where we're at today, right? So retail media really started as retailers were trying to monetize their own shopping first-party data with on-site ads, right? Commerce media takes that same data-driven model and really expands it beyond that retailer's walls into both the open web, social, search, and connected TV. Today, it's all about activating that commerce wherever consumers are making decisions. And so when I think of like commerce media, that's like the connection of like the full journey, the customer journey, the flattening of the customer journey, whatever terminology you want to use. And the term commerce, I think, really recognizes that shoppers are no longer sitting within those silos. And that means that as consumers are moving more fluidly between discovery and consideration and purchase, that can happen sometimes within seconds and sometimes within weeks. Commerce media brings all those touch points together that really allows the brand to measure and optimize that entire path. Now, why the shift matters, right, is that like retail media implies that single channel and commerce media signals that more connected omni-channel ecosystem. And I think that's ultimately like where Sky fits into this because it's helping the marketers, really operationalize that shift and connect the data, the insights, and the activations across all these different places where commerce is happening, from Amazon to Walmart to Instacart to Google and even into social platforms, which, is the next evolution of this performance marketing.
I've also been finding that I need to use the term commerce media because of some of the new entrants in the space, that are not retailers. So like the Marriotts and the MasterCards, they still have very much a commercial take on media, but they're not a retailer. So calling them retail media networks just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do technically call them retail media networks, but like it's a great example of like, again, meeting the customer where they're at. And if you could do very specific geolocation targeting to advertisings on a hotel room screen, during a big convention, right? Like we saw this during advertising week in New York. A lot of the cabs were running ads that were very specific to the companies that were in town for advertising week. And so you could almost like geo fence midtown New York, knowing that there were, 20, 30,000 advertising professionals in the space. And you could have advertising both when they're taking their ride service or when they're in their hotel room or when they're actually in the show.
Yeah. And that's really what the excitement is, right? So tell me a little bit more about how you're seeing retail media, commerce media evolve since you first were starting out, both at Amazon and outside of it.
Well, part of it is I think the connectivity between like what do we have in the past? We just had like commerce, and what do we have today? We have the ability to have like the growth of streaming television and to connect the audiences between what's happening in commerce and the television that they're viewing. And if we think back to old school linear television, you were just looking for reach and frequency, but you didn't have a real way to measure. Maybe you were measuring off of like brand equity or brand awareness. But today you can actually really drive into the audience and the shows that they're watching and touch them in the podcasts that they're listening to or into the shows that they're watching and drive it back to the ultimate funnel of the conversion. Now, that lends itself to some confusion in this space because we want to treat that funnel in the same way that we were treating the old commerce funnel, right? Which had a search, find, buy, and a very defined return on ad spend that was there. So you still have to think about different channels to expand your audience, expand your reach, and ultimately get you the larger potential customer set that you want. And I think like that's what's super exciting is that you can take what you're learning within one particular area and you can use that to greatly expand it into others.
Also, too, as you're talking, it reminds me of some of the more exciting things that I've been seeing, which is integrating all these different technologies. So, yeah, now you can have much more measurability of your television advertising. But not only that, you can actually turn those ads into like impulse buy moments. I think it was DoorDash did some advertising during the Super Bowl. Like in that moment, you could order snacks while you're watching the game. I mean, the whole thing is coming together in a way that I think that's really exciting from a consumer standpoint, too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's about the customer journey or the customer journey becoming more linear. It's about social sparking interest, right? And driving new consumer behaviors. But ultimately, for brands, the advantage of like an omni-channel approach is that we know that when you have fragmented data, you can kill your growth. And so that we've seen is very true when brands have access to more customer signals and channels and networks, but they don't know what to do with it. And with that comes the new challenge and a new opportunity to unify that data and then drive that precision advertising in a more meaningful way, which is what I think is leading to a lot of the explosive growth and full funnel, advertising structures that are being driven today.
So, what are some of the more exciting commerce media developments you've seen recently?
Well, besides some of the ones I probably have mentioned already, I would look at like retail media's overall growth, the expansion into display video and CTV, and the ability to leverage that commerce data to target the audiences across channels and unlock those growth opportunities. We've seen that with the investments that Amazon's making into their CTV and how those investments are paying off with like Prime Video and the immersion into, the new opportunities that they're showing up in the smart TV market. I think one of the other pieces that's super exciting today is the rise of agentic AI. Now, we need to cut through the noise because marketers at the end of the day don't need more AI hype. They need true AI that is working for them.
Hmm.
And, but when you build to meet those needs, agentic AI can become the tool that allows the human in the loop to be faster, smarter, and make more integrated decisions, and ultimately turn more insights into actions, which is what we all want to do. And that is freeing up the teams, your teams, my teams, all the teams, to be more focused on what really matters for their business.
Well, how do you then, though, see commerce media playing into these agentic platforms? Do you have any insight into how that's going to play out? Because there has been some talk that with the rise of these kind of answer engine platforms, there's not as much advertising space and ads matter less.
Yeah, I think that when it comes down to it, I think for brands, it's about coverage and not necessarily choosing their side of where they want to be putting their ad dollars. And I think what agentic AI is ultimately providing back to the customer is the ability to do scenario planning and analysis to understand, like, what are the audiences that are working? Where can investments be made? And how can you use a trial mentality to test new things? In the past, buying across walled gardens was complex and more siloed. Today, when you layer on technology that companies like Sky have, you're actually able to start unifying some of those efforts and understand how brands are activating across these walled or hedge gardens, whatever term we want to use. I personally believe that in the end, everyone can actually win. There's plenty of growth to go around in commerce media. I think there'll be some consolidation. I think there's natural things that will happen within the space if you follow historically the rise of other things similar to this. There's natural maturity that's going to lead to certain winners and certain mergers that happen. But in the end, retailers want to build strong ad businesses, and the success is going to come to those who are best able to deliver the right customer experience and a data-driven insight for brands to want to be making more investments.
I mean, there's a ton of players now operating commerce media networks, but Amazon still really takes the bulk of the ad dollars among those. Do you think any other commerce media offering is going to rival Amazon anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, there are opportunities that are abundant that are out there, right? I was just recently at an event with Walmart. Walmart was talking about the connectivity of their Vizio televisions with the Walmart Connect ad network with their in-store purchases. And, Walmart has a large store footprint, if you've never realized that, right? Over 4,000 retail stores. You also have, I'll say, like, the niche audiences that you can get through like Instacart and getting to the thousands of different retailers that they're working with. And so I think it's easy to look at one person and say that their growth and dominance in the space maybe is unrivaled, but good brands today that are building successful campaigns to reach new audiences are taking omni-channel approaches, and they're looking for the best place to spend their dollars to get the best return and to expand their reach and their audience. And that's ultimately what brands want to be doing. For lack of a better terms, one of the reasons that I left Amazon to want to come into the tech world was because I started to see this connectivity between not just what's happening within the walled gardens of retail media, but the impact that social is having within that. And so what's happening when people are searching on Google or product discovering on Pinterest, right? Pinterest is becoming a true product discovery platform for a whole new generation of people, being used in totally different ways than Pinterest was being used, 10 years ago. Of course, TikTok can throw into this mix and uproot a lot of this logic and concept. And so when we look at different genres of ages, and I look at like my kids who are 14, 18, and 19 and how they shop and discover, it's totally different than how I shop and discover. And in that type of world, a brand needs to be where their consumers are. And ultimately, the particular network that you may discover is not the network that you're going to make the purchase. And so you might discover a product in Walmart and buy it on Amazon. You might discover a product on TikTok and buy it in Walmart. right? There's lots of different avenues for how the consumer is going to get from discovery all the way down to purchase.
And you feel like solutions like Sky are kind of at the center of helping brands make those connections then?
Yeah, I think solutions like Sky are at the center of helping brands understand where their media investment is working and how the audience and signals they're learning from one particular channel can be applied into other channels to expand their reach and their growth.
Okay. What do you think that the industry is getting wrong about commerce media? Are there any like misconceptions or ill-advised strategies out there that you'd like to dispel?
Yeah, I think the one
Oh,
that
good.
I the one that I think of a lot is that it's not just about lower funnel conversions. The myth is that commerce media only drives bottom funnel performance. It's really a full funnel engine, and the brands that are doing it successfully understand that by spending in upper funnel awareness, they're driving lower funnel conversion. This could be, using more inventory across CTV, which didn't exist 5, 10 years ago. And when it's used strategically, those signals that I was chatting about earlier really become that power tool that you can use to really make your lower funnel activities even stronger. The other thing that I would think about is that more data doesn't always mean better decisions, right? So many marketers are chasing data volume instead of data quality. And there's a disconnect there because if you have unstructured data, you actually start to slow yourself down. So the real differentiator that you should be considering is about unified, actionable data, because that's what we find is ultimately allowing like our AI tool to automate, suggest, and create better effectiveness across channels.
With everything happening in the space of e-commerce with AI right now, how can companies start to kind of prepare themselves for where things are headed next, both from an advertising but just generally? There's so much change happening right now.
Yeah, my personal advice is you got to play in this stuff on your own. You've got to play in this stuff on a daily basis, right? So AI is collapsing that path purchase. The traditional multi-stage funnel is compressing even further, and consumers are discovering, evaluating, and buying all at once, right? When you think about AI, discovery is moving more towards agents. But in that same regard, like I was shopping for a pair of jeans the other day, and it made me think about AI in two regards. One, jeans are very seasonal. So how is an AI agent ever going to understand kind of new trends and new fashion that's out there, right? Maybe it'll get there at some point in time and being able to make recommendations and suggestions. And so I think AI is going to help in like maybe I have all these symptoms. What should I take? Here's a recommendation. But I think there's other industries where it's going to maybe be a little bit slower in its adoption. I think as brands are thinking about this, they should really think of the idea that prediction is one of the new thoughts of targeting. AI is shifting us from this reactive to this proactive stance. And the best commerce media strategies that are out there are anticipating the needs before the consumer is expressing them, right? Like, what's the old statement? Like, if Henry Ford had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? They wouldn't have conceptualized a car in the way that a car is today. And so we as brands need to understand that AI can bring us information, but we still are the innovation that needs to sit on top of that. And then the last is really that like automation really is necessary in all of this. But campaigns need a balance of the strategy being checked against the human in the loop, along with the automation that can do rebalancing of bids and budgets, or maybe the changing of creative. All of this ultimately leads to a better data integration that's necessary. And that's what's leading to ultimately higher quality signals and suggestions and recommendations. And so it's a lot for brands and marketers to think about. And so that's why I always recommend one, you start playing with it on your own so you understand kind of how it works. And then two, how do you bring it in an iterative approach to where you're comfortable with the suggestions that it's making so that as it becomes more and more ingrained into the day-to-day work that you're doing, it actually becomes a force multiplier for you as opposed to a deterrent or a distraction to your business.
I feel like that's actually good general advice for AI across industries, not just in advertising. I feel like I could bring that into the world of journalism too. Like you do have to just kind of get in there and start playing with it yourself and understanding what
Yeah.
it can do and what you as a human still bring to the equation.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is the advice I give my kids. And I have, for the last 2 years, I've been telling my kids to use AI, even as school has told them not to use AI. And I've debated it with teachers. I've told my kids very clearly, you do not use AI to cheat. You use AI to help you be more intelligent. But the only way you figure out how AI works is if you actually are in AI and you're playing with it. And you have to ask it to do some of the most mundane things that you would be like, I don't need AI to do that. And so literally just keep an AI on your phone. And when you've got a question, give a really detailed prompt into a Perplexity or a Claude or a Google Gemini and ask it a question. You'd be amazed at some of the things that it'll be able to help you do, whether it's giving you step-by-step instructions to solve something or whether it's planning a whole itinerary for a trip that you're trying to plan. And that then starts to open you up and be just more comfortable with it in general.
It's funny because this summer I was at an amusement park and I saw somebody in like one of the ride lines literally asking ChatGPT, like, what rides should I do when at this amusement park? And on the one hand, I was kind of like, seriously, you're here. Like, just go do them. On the other hand, I bet they had a much more efficient trip than I
Yes.
did.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on how to get through Disney in a day.
Well, apparently, if you have ChatGPT, it can help you.
Yes.
Okay, so before I let you go, we have our last final set of questions, our mixtape rapid fire section. Are you ready for these
Yeah,
ones?
let's do it.
Okay, so first one is what was your favorite part about working at Amazon?
Imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is because for a long time, I really didn't feel like I belonged there. And then I came to realize that a lot of people that work at Amazon don't feel like they belong there. And that's part of, I think, the amazing culture that they have in this bar raising capability that really gets the most out of you and demonstrates that you do belong there. Right. It was like one of my proudest moments when I was there was when I got my review and I was rated for, being above the bar. I don't remember the exact terminology anymore. And I was like, wow, I really belong here.
So, like, you liked that you felt out of place, but then the process of proving that you actually were in the right place.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
to me, listen, nobody's ever worked at a company like Amazon until you work. Right? There's only 4 or 5 companies the size and scale of Amazon, and so I wasn't sure before I went there that it was the right place for me, that I could thrive the way that I want to be in that company. And the fact that I actually could, I thought was pretty cool, that Amazon really let me be me in my day-to-day job, and that me being me was good enough to be above the bar in Amazon's terminology.
What is a brand whose marketing prowess really just like blows you away? You think they just do amazing stuff?
I'll give you 2. One, I did an interview last year with the founder of Poppy, and really understanding
Oh,
like the
yeah.
rise and growth of Poppy, and how they went from a kombucha drink or an apple cider drink in the kitchen to a national brand. That really blew me away. But in the same regard, I've seen other, I'll say it, Amazon first companies like Elf who have been able to do it in totally different ways. And they do have 2 things in common. They probably have more than 2, but they have 2 things in common that I could share. One is they made investments in upper funnel advertising early in their growth. And 2, they took risk as a business and were able to measure the success and pivot their business accordingly as they saw the success and failures that they were doing.
Yeah. And I think a third one, which also applies to Amazon, is they're really hyper clued into their consumer base. They know exactly who they're talking to and what those people want to hear.
Yep.
So those are really good examples. All right. This one's a little further afield, but you mentioned like the beginnings of your career at textbooks.com. You worked at a number of online booksellers. Then you weren't doing online bookselling anymore, but you went to the ultimate online bookseller, Amazon. So I'm a little curious, like what kind of a reader you are and who's your go-to when you want to buy new books?
Yeah, I'm more of a podcast listener than I am a reader.
Okay.
I'll say that I've gotten good at using the library to get access to books, but I was actually blown away the other day because I went into a Barnes and Noble store and I hadn't been into one in like 10 years. And I was like, wow, like there was a lot of people in this store still buying physical books, which was really cool to see. I, from like a podcast reading genre perspective, I really like murder mystery, really into like FBI, learning like the intricate stories of like how operations either came to be or were executed. Those are kind of what I like to do on like the fun reading side of things. And then of course on the business side, I like to read a lot around change and change management.
Okay. Now, you are no longer Amazon Ads evangelist, but if your friends and family were to give you an evangelist title in your life, what would it be for?
Funny enough, my kids took 4 years to figure out what an evangelist was. And so when I changed jobs, they were saying, "Hey, Dad, I finally figured out what you do and now you changed." I would say that if I was going to get an evangelist title in my life, it would probably be somewhere around maybe college sports or whiskey, although I don't really consider myself, I consider myself enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be like a sportscaster.
Mm. I mean, it sounds like you also could be considered an AI evangelist too, just, with the tack you're taking with that, with your kids,
Yeah, it's interesting because I would still consider myself a very novice around AI, but some of the people I talk to do share with me that I provide a lot of insight and guidance to them. But I know there's a lot of people out there that are way smarter about AI than me. But maybe I'm a father evangelist. My kids would probably say that I give them too much advice, but isn't that what we all say
A
about our
dad
kids?
advice. Last one. I mean, you've made a lot of big shifts throughout your career. What's your best tip for making a big career change?
Yeah, I think one is that when you make a big career change, you stop and listen before wanting to come in and make change. Understand the context of a business and how it got to where it is, because it's really important to understand that before you want to implement change within a business. And so, like when I came to Sky, I really spent my first 5 to 6 weeks on the road talking to my employees, different employees in our offices, customers, prospects, partners. I wanted to kind of get the full 360 of where everything was at before I started putting any type of strategy and plan together. Because at the end of the day, it's the customer that should be driving the decisions that we're making. And I need to hear things directly from them. And then you have to kind of figure out, how do you start to implement change without disrupting what's happening today? And that's a very delicate balance, because you don't want to just make change for change's sake. You want to make change because it can truly drive something impactful in the business.
Yeah. And so that you are being additive to the company that you've now joined, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, great insights in general, Jeffrey. Thanks for walking us through all of this today and being here with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. Be sure to join us also on the Retail Touchpoints page on LinkedIn to continue the conversation, and let us know who you want to hear from in future episodes. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you all soon. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Retail Remix. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. Until next time, keep mixing it up.